Hi, it's Chris Titley here. As part of the Scoreboard podcast series, I'm joined by Brad Miller. Brad, thank you so much for coming into the impromptu studio.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Brad, 2025, how's it begun with you? We're sitting here in late Feb.
Yeah, so we've only had the one trial against genuine opposition, and so I was just having this discussion yesterday. It's probably the most optimistic and excited as I've been about a season upcoming. And so after I was at the Giants in 2019 and we made the grand final and got thumped, I remember going into the 2020 season. I think the guys had a real spring in their step. They were stung clearly by the grand final and they were pretty keen to make amends. So I felt like that going into the 2020 season. I feel like after the frustrations of last season, the guys have come back and they're really hungry. There's just an edge about them. So yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting to see where that goes.
And mate, you're living in Brizzy.
Yeah,
and doing the dash.
Down. Yeah.
How are you finding it?
Yeah, no, it's okay. Like I'm up and out by 4:30 a.m, so I get down there pretty early. So no traffic on the way down, but I'm only 2 crashes away in 1 week from close to a nervous breakdown. So
right,
no, I'm just joking.
No, there's been a bit of traffic. You've been stuck in it every now and then.
Oh, it can get bad. Yeah, it's just got to take a crash, but it's part of it.
And what do you do in the car, mate? Listen to some podcasts, to do the phone calls. What do you do?
No, podcasts and books. I use that. Everyone asks about the commute. Oh, how do you do the M1 every day? But I actually see it as it's a good transition. So it's home to work, work to home. I use that as 50 minutes that I wouldn't get at home when I've got a 4-year-old, nearly 5.
Yep.
So I use it to get better, to learn, to read books, to listen to podcasts.
Yeah, nice. And let's talk about your love of footy. Where did that begin?
A long time ago. So born and bred in Brisbane. I actually played rugby league until I was 13. I think I made the transition over to AFL when I was 13. And so dad's an ex-professional, played in the 70s. Was pretty much teaching me to play AFL while I was playing rugby league. I was the kicker. We were having kick-to-kick out the front of the house. So I was always exposed to AFL, but given all my mates played rugby league, I gravitated towards rugby league. But I sort of got to a stage when I was about 12. I don't know exactly what it was, but I think I just was excited about a new challenge at that age. And so I started then in under 13s and didn't look back.
And the love for league, where did that, what was your team? Was it the Bronx?
It was the Broncos, yeah. I was Alfie Langer, so I had number 7 on the back.
You have his trading cards and posters in the room and all that sort of stuff?
Well, we used to trade the cards, yeah, for sure. But it was more all my mates at school because everyone played. You were sort of an outlier. If you played AFL, you were one of maybe 2 or 3 in the whole school. So just naturally wanted to do what everyone else was doing at school.
Yeah, and it would have been the Bears/Lions, yeah?
Yeah, so they just
96
96 was that transition to go to the Lions. So yeah, I remember going down to Carrara to watch the Bears a few times, early days, I would have been really young.
Yeah.
Went down with Dad because Dad obviously still loved it. But it wasn't until I think I became a member in 96, 97 when I started to get to the Lions games regularly and became a fan.
And the Bears would have touched up a couple of times?
Yeah, I can't remember. I was too young.
And so the love of AFL then, what was the fascination at the age of 12? Was it the ball going different directions? Was it the space?
Yeah, it was from memory, it was the 360 nature. Because I was playing basketball at the same time, I loved the fact that because I was an athletic kid, I liked the fact that you could do anything. There was just a bit more freedom in the game. And so I remember just being that young and wanting to run and use my speed and athleticism, whereas in rugby league it always felt like it was sort of boxed in a little bit. You'd always get the ball on the third tackle and run at the same guy, and it just felt a bit more repetitive, whereas AFL felt like it was more 360 and you could express yourself a little bit more. And
then throwing out the Alan Langer posters, who'd you replace that with then with AFL?
Well, yeah, funny you say that. I was a Lions supporter, but it was Wayne Carey because I played forward. I love Wayne Carey. I played centre half forward too, so he was just naturally the guy that I gravitated towards. Yeah,
and the ability to watch the games, did you get into it? Did you love the data and the statistics as well at that age?
Not so much as a kid, no. No, it was more the athletic element. It was trying to get as fit as you could. It was just always the challenge of working on a weakness more so than the stats and the numbers. That sort of developed later.
Yeah, and then when did you realise you were any good at it?
The stats and the numbers?
No, the game, footy.
Pretty early on. Like I reckon I made the state team in my first year only after about 7 or 8 games. So that was just by chance. I was a kid that could tackle. I'd come from rugby league, so I sort of made an impact on games.
You used your skills already, yeah.
Well, not so much. I didn't have a lot of skill, and I didn't throughout my whole career. That was never my strength. But I was quite hard at it, and I could tackle. And I think as a young 12, 13-year-old, that stands out. Like if a kid's got a background and feels comfortable with contact, that stands out at that age.
Yeah.
So I was able to come in and play on the Queensland team straight away. So.
And then when you realised that you were pretty good and you were playing for your state, what was there a dream there? Was there a goal? Was there something that you're like, actually, I want to play AFL, or was it sort of let's just play as much sport as we can and have a bit of fun?
Yeah, early days. So 13th, 14th, 15th, it was as many sports as I can. I was into lifesaving, swimming, surfing, anything I could do, I was up for. And then I sort of cracked it with footy. I had stress fractures in the foot, had a 12-month period where I probably only played 5 or 6 games for the whole season. So the frustration, my dad was coaching us at Mount Gravatt. I was frustrated because I was always injured. I actually wanted to walk away. And so I came home one day, I've had enough, Dad, I'm done. Told Mum as well. So that was interesting because the way that they both handled it was very different. Dad was obviously disappointed. He could see that I had some natural ability and could, whether I was going to make it or not, who knows, but he could see something, whereas Mum she was a little different. She sort of gave me the space to feel like that and walk away and didn't ever try to convince me to do anything different. And so I think having that space, I was able to come back on my own terms. And then since when I came back in the end of under 16s, that was when the fire was lit. That was when I really wanted to go on with it.
And that was playing club footy?
Yeah, Mount Gravatt.
Yep.
Vultures. So 16s, started playing senior footy at 16, late in that season, under 16s, early 17s.
Yeah, with the men?
Yeah, with the men, the senior men. So that was an interesting transition, sort of being 16 and playing senior footy. You have to grow up pretty quick. And so, yeah, I think it hardens you up for when you do come in and play senior AFL footy. You see the guys that have come through the under-18 competition as opposed to the guys that have played in the sandful or something. They're just different players. They're physically able to stand up to the rigours of senior footy.
And then around that age of 16, playing with the men, playing in the seniors, did you think, actually, I am okay, I'm handling myself, and actually the AFL's not far away?
I never thought AFL. No, I'd never project myself. That was always a dream, and I'd always see it on TV, and it was something that existed in the background. But
I didn't watch it and go, I wish I'd be out there, or
I did dream, but it didn't actually sink in that it could become a reality until Mitch Hahn got drafted 2 years before I got drafted. He got drafted to the Bulldogs, who was a Queenslander. He'd played in the state team, so I'd played a bit of junior footy against Mitch and around Mitch. And then when Nick Riewoldt and Daniel Pratt got drafted the year before me, this was under 17, so Daniel Pratt was a year older, even though we played all our junior footy against each other. And Nick Riewoldt was the captain of Queensland the year before. So when those two got drafted, it was almost like now it became a reality. Whereas if you played footy in Queensland before that period, it was pretty unique to get drafted. Maybe you'd come through the rookie list system, but it was pretty rare that a guy from Queensland was going to get drafted until we saw Nick do it.
I always forgot that the Riewolds from Queensland originally. It was the Gold Coast, wasn't it?
Yeah, Nick was. Yeah, Jack wasn't. So Jack was Tassie, but Nick moved up to the Gold Coast with his family. I don't know what age.
I think they had a restaurant or something, or a cafe or something.
Yeah, not too sure.
Not too sure, but yeah. And then going through the draft process, you want to talk about that day?
Yeah, it was surreal, really. Like the feeling of having your name read out was amazing. Like I thought I was going to get rookie listed to Brisbane. So they'd told me that if there was a spot there, they were going to take me on a rookie list. And so I'd sort of written the draft off as maybe a pie in the sky. Melbourne had come and seen me. I'd had letters from Geelong and West Coast, but they were just letters, just saying, we're watching you, we're keeping an eye on you.
And how did that make that pressure then? Like, we're keeping an eye on you, we're watching you. Were you like, oh, yeah, bring it on? Or were you like, oh, geez, I have to watch every step in every game?
No. So that year, you're sort of used to the fact that people are watching. So you just have to adjust to that. You do feel the pressure. I did anyway. I felt the pressure. But at that stage, getting letters, it still didn't become real until I actually heard my name get read out. I had to pinch myself. Like it was immediately your phone blows up. All the family are getting really emotional about it. And the prospect of moving away, that the reality sets in maybe an hour, 2 hours later when you've got all the family over at your place. But it's a pretty special moment in your life to see the joy that it brings your family.
Had you lived out of home since then or before then?
Never before.
So that was a bit of a, like, I'm going here.
Well, yeah, it was that. It was moving out for the first time.
Where am I going to live? How am I going to feed
myself? Moving 2 states away.
Yeah.
Like, never really done any cooking or, you're still living at home with your parents and with your mum. So it was that 12 months, I probably grew more in those 12 months, than I had in any other stage in my life, just having to face all those things, rent, going shopping, where am I going to live? How do I get to and from training? All of those sorts of things. Yeah. So you grow up pretty quick.
Yeah, right. And then heading down to the foreign state, the mecca of AFL, VFL. How'd you go?
It was a huge shock to the system, and I can still remember the first paycheck that I got in the big city. I went straight to City Beach and bought $600 worth of board shorts and wetsuits and jumpers and things that I'd never done up
It's a
here.
bit cold.
Well, just even the fact that you had money to spend, like it was my first job. Like I'd spent 6 months before working in a fruit shop, unstacking fruit pallets, into a cold room. So I never had a lot of money. Then all of a sudden, when you're getting paid and you've got free time on your hands, you don't have to go to work on your day off. It's funny when you look back how big a milestone that was. But I just went and blew my whole first paycheck on board shorts. I can't believe I did that.
And then walking around in boardies in the middle of winter in Melbourne, you're like, that's the Queenslander here.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you get a bit of grief? Like
No, you know what? Still to this day, when I'm in Melbourne, I'll wear board shorts when it's 6 degrees. I don't know. It's
spot
just
the tourist. Yeah. Mate, and then putting the kid on to getting selected for your first game, the memories around that and the dream or sort of dream come true. I'm like, actually, I'm here now.
Yeah, so it's funny. Like we've just had a young fella who just got drafted, Leo Lombard, who has hurt his shoulder, so he's going to get a shoulder reconstruction. This was his first trial game, and I can remember I told him the story the other night. In the first marking contest in my first trial for Melbourne, we were playing in Adelaide. I've taken a chest mark and landed on my shoulder and done a really bad AC joint, and so it's like 6 to 8 weeks. And so I can remember that at the time, like getting a game, even though it was a practice game, all of a sudden you were running out with guys like David Neitz and Russell Robertson and those sorts of guys that were caricatures from a TV show. To me, that's how I saw it. All of a sudden you're playing with them, but then for that to happen in the first marking contest, just again it was a pinch yourself moment. It's like this can't be happening. Like all of a sudden your dreams are becoming real, and then you got to sit on the sidelines for 8 weeks. So. Yeah, that was cool, but it set me back. So I didn't debut until, I can't remember exactly what round it was, but it was about round 9 or 10. So still first year, so that was pretty cool. And I remember when Neil Danaher came into the locker room and told me I was going to play the first game, and the excitement of then wanting to call everyone on my phone book, on my contacts was...
There was no social media back then.
No, you couldn't put a post on. No, it was actually sending a text message. Archaic.
Yeah, I know. I suppose the players that you're playing with, who you mentioned, were sort of iconic, and you knew their name, but they probably didn't know your name. Was that kind of a weird feeling?
Oh, 100%. The first training session, going
like,
around.
I'm such and such. You're like, I know.
It's a weird feeling because all of a sudden you're their teammate. They're looking at you like they need to take you under their wing. They're sort of sussing you out at the same time. But these guys are superheroes, and so especially for a young kid from Cleveland up here, Queensland, you don't see a lot of footy stars, unless I used to go into the change rooms at the Lions games post-game. Again, it was just a barrier between this is real life and those guys are superstars, those guys are heroes. And so all of a sudden when you're going around shaking hands, it just feels weird.
And how did you cope with that up here in regards to the fact that knowing that you're good enough, knowing that you've been selected for the reasons because you are good enough, and then playing with these, so-called icons and legends that you know, but then going, well, actually, I'm as good as them.
Yeah, it took a while for that to sink in. I think you got to play 50 games before you actually feel like you can express yourself at the level. For the first 50, you're sort of just still figuring it out and holding on, trying to work out who you are as a player, how you're going to fit into this side. You're still earning the respect of your teammates. It's not until you've played 40, 50 that you start to feel like you've consolidated your spot.
But the first game, let's go back to that first game. You said it was round 9 or...
Yeah, it was round 8, 9.
And who was it against?
Fremantle over there.
Yeah,
so,
right. You got the plane on the kit, and everyone's at the airport saying, "Oh, there's the Melbourne team," so you felt part of the crew, and then running out for the first time.
Yeah. So it was being away. It was interesting because no parents there these days. Now we roll out the red carpet. The parents are involved. The first game, it's a big thing. Often they present the jersey. It's
you got nothing
back then.
Hey, welcome to A grade.
My parents aren't getting on a flight to go over to watch me play in Fremantle, but
and they might catch a glimpse of it on Sports Tonight.
Maybe, yeah. There's no KO. They're not watching it live. But I remember my most vivid memory of that first game, because it's going so fast, all of a sudden the level jumps up. I remember ball on the wing, and I went over, picked the ball up off the ground, had a player in my vision, didn't know who it was, got tackled, got holding the ball, and it was Peter Vardy, who I hadn't given the handball to. Very experienced, hard-nosed, crafty goal sneak forward from Adelaide, just been traded to Melbourne. He came over and he grabbed me by the jersey. I thought he was going to lift me up off the bottom of the pack. he's grabbed me by the jersey and he's basically pointed at me and he just said, "You give it. When I'm in front of you, you give it." And I just remember looking down, and it was that moment of plays going on so fast, crowd's looking at me, because I feel like all of a sudden everyone in the crowd's looking at you. You're 18, and I've got one of my senior teammates who I really respect looking down at me, just laying down the law.
With the death stare.
Yes, sir. Whatever you say, I'm doing what you're telling me.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was like an orientation. Right?
Yeah. And I think, it's always struck me the impact that those guys can have on young guys straight away. If they deliver their message in the right way, the growth that I got from that, it basically was just laying down the law. Now, his message could have been irrelevant, but it was the tone and intensity without disrespecting me. He told me, these are the rules, you follow them and you'll be okay. So it was a powerful message in leadership.
And the speed of the game, that first game, was sort of like, actually, this is a bit quicker than I thought.
Yeah, it was manic. It was crazy.
The decision making.
Yeah, the decision making. Yeah, the traffic. Like, because everyone's moving so fast and everyone's so strong and powerful, the chaos around the ball it's really hard to get used to. And like I said, like, it takes you 30, 40 games before you actually feel like you're at the level and you feel like you're moving at the same pace. Before that, you're going off instinct, and every now and then a mark will stick, or a good bit of play will happen, but you're not actually thinking. You're sort of just in fight or flight mode. And then once you become comfortable, you can start to then the game slows down a little.
Before we talk about getting comfortable, your first goal?
First goal. It would have been in one of those trial games before I hurt my shoulder. I don't remember. First goal might have been...
First AFL goal?
Yeah, it might have been my second game against Richmond.
Just sort of like a non-event, really, in your brain?
Pretty much. It wasn't a big one, I don't think. It wasn't a monumental one. Might have been a grubber off the goal square.
Every game that you played, you started to get a little bit more comfortable about the pace, the routine, the pecking order.
Yeah, I started down back.
Oh, right.
Forward early, then went down back, made my debut as a forward.
Yep.
Yeah, but then floated between centre-half back and centre-half forward. So... it took me until probably year 3. The year 3 was when I'd hit the 30, 40 games, and that was when I started to go, well, what do I want to get out of this season? Who am I as a player? What are my strengths? And then how can I use them to the benefit, and how can I fit into this forward line with David Neitz and Russell Robertson and guys that have played a lot of footy?
I was just going to touch on that, the individual aspect of the game, obviously improving yourself and improving the way that you play and getting comfortable with the AFL versus where you fit in the team and the team dynamic. How did you cope with that?
Yeah, they're both different. I think the pressure that players are under these days it's far greater than it was when we played, just with the access fans have to give you their opinion on how guys have played, and
the media.
Social media's just changed the whole landscape on guys.
You're rubbish. They should be replaced. It's horrible. They get paid all this money and they miss goals and all that sort of stuff. I mean, it's hard to ignore for some players, I would have thought.
It's really hard. It's really hard. You can tell a young player, don't look at it, don't read it. They don't know you.
10 o'clock at night on a Tuesday, just get the phone open.
You've got a young player who, he could be dealing with some self-conscious thoughts or whatever, and so all of a sudden he's at his weakest moment. He's going to open it up and have a look, and then you can end up in a spiral.
But in 2005, 6, 7... Wasn't there.
You used to have to actually go online, and there was all these forum sites and blog sites back then. And so that was a thing that we were managing. Guys were going on post-game to read either positive or negative comments about themselves. So I think it's a trap either way. Like, if I'd played a good game and I'd go on there and read what other people were saying, it would give me an inflated sense of how I was actually going. And so that's just as risky as going on there to self-loathe, if you'd made some critical errors and you want to read what everyone says. Oh, did everyone notice that? So you go onto the forum site and have a read. You just end up in a spiral of self-hatred.
But it must be hard to ignore now.
I can't imagine what it would be like, to be honest.
But now as a coach, is it part of that's like, kids, they are kids. Really, some of them reading some negative stuff.
Yeah. And so all I can do is sort of share my own experience in how detrimental it was for my own career, or just your ability to be happy while you're playing and not feel that stress and pressure all the time. Because you've got to be able to give these guys, we have to be able to hit the off switch for them. If they don't have an off switch, eventually they're just going to get to the point where they've had enough and they'll want to walk away. So it's a tough balance because, like I said before, like, you've got to have a lot of self-discipline to not get drawn into going down that path and looking at what people are saying about you.
Yeah, and then during your career, you managed to play finals footy?
Yeah.
And do you want to talk about that level of intensity and that step up there?
Yeah, so it was definitely a change. It was
After a hard season, you've got to now then step up to the next step up.
Yeah, I always loved the excitement of it and the pressure that came with it. We played finals regularly in my first 4 years at Melbourne before we sort of fell off a cliff. And the step up in crowd, the scrutiny post game and the reviews in the paper
On the forums.
Yeah, well, and in the paper. Like
Yeah,
it was in the
true.
paper, then it's big spreads in the Herald Sun about finals and their rating performances and all that sort of stuff.
So you get a 7, you're like, oh, is that good, bad, indifferent? Oh, someone got a 4, that's okay, But
It's sort of funny when I think back to it now, like the amount of weight I gave people's opinion who just didn't really matter. They didn't know the ins and outs of how we were trying to play. They didn't know me as a person. It's just one person's opinion and how much effect that can have on a young player, whether it's positive or negative. Sometimes you get, like I said before, you get that inflated sense of how well you're going when you're not really going that well.
How did you cope as an AFL player with people on the street recognising you and the trading cards, your name on a trading card finally?
Yeah, it's a weird feeling. I don't think you ever get used to it.
Yeah.
Sort of, without sounding stupid, but just that feeling of having someone recognise that you're a footy player changes how you are. It changes your demeanour. And so I would always go out of my way to go and say hello, and I'd make time to, have a kick with kids and all that. That's not the part. It's when you go into a cafe and you just notice they might not say anything to you, but you just notice that all of a sudden
there's a couple of eyes on you.
Yeah, there's a couple of, especially in Melbourne. Like Melbourne, it's everywhere. And so without even knowing it, it does subconsciously change how you are being. So you're being less of yourself because there's that feeling that you're being watched.
When do you reckon you played your best footy?
Probably over that 2004, 2005, 2006 period.
Even though you topped the goal scoring in 08.
Yeah, with a huge tally of 26 goals. That's how well we were going.
The other side of the ledger, not the finals footy that year.
No, so that was just after the period where David Neitz finished up. Robbo was done. So it was that real transition period where I'd gone from being the third cog in a wheel of key position guys to then all of a sudden having to shoulder the load, and we were struggling. So you play forward in a side that's getting belted. It's really hard to impose yourself the way that you want to. Plus I miss way too many. You put me in front of the sticks like I was an unreliable set shot at goal. So that brought its own pressures. All of a sudden you start to feel like that transition period, the club's relying on you to then take the mantle off a guy like David Neitz, who has been a champion of the club. That builds pressure. I start to build pressure on myself. I'm like, people are relying on you, so then I need to step up. And in moments when I didn't, I definitely felt the burden of pressure.
And what do you think in regards to your skill and your attitude towards the game, and even something Paul Roos called it his superpower, like to get selected to be the best and whatnot every week because there's other people wanting to play AFL. What do you think it was about you that you could look back on and go, I was good at that and that's why I was actually picked every week and that's why I played AFL?
Yeah, I think there were two things. I think it was my ability to work. So I had an ability to push through and wear an opponent down. And so what I lacked in talent and skill, I made up for in work ethic. And sometimes I'd have bigger second halves than I would first halves because I'd just ground my opponent into the ground. I was able to run all day. So that was a weapon that I had as a key position guy, that I could run better than most other key position backs. And then the other one was that I was just willing to do whatever it took for the team. And so what I lacked in talent, I made up for in my willingness to play a role, to create a contest, to do all those things that are unheralded but are important for team structure. So I look at guys that can do that now as a coach, and being reliable and not remarkable is really valuable.
In a team, in a balance, like your role.
Exactly.
And if you know your role well, even though it's probably could potentially be the detriment of your individual performance, maybe, I don't know.
I don't think it was detrimental to my own performance, but you're a part of a cog, right? When there's 18 guys on the field, you need guys that are willing to play their role no matter what, even if they don't have the frills of another player. But then you might need another guy like a Russell Robertson or an Aaron Davey, like the cream on top, that have got the absolute ability to punish sides, and with their skill, they bring a different skill set. You know what I mean? So, So for me, it was just understanding this is who I am and willingly being able to play that role.
Before we move into the transition of post AFL, I'm interested to know whether you played AFL knowing that there's someone on your back that potentially could have taken your spot every week, or did you play a bit more freeingly, knowing that, this is my only chance, potentially my only chance in case I get injured tomorrow and that's it, my career's gone?
Yeah, I didn't think about that early days. When you're a kid coming through and you've established yourself, I didn't think about that whatsoever. It wasn't until you got the next wave of young guys like a Jack Watts and a group of, he was a number one draft pick, and there was a lot of talent that was then being drafted because we were doing so poorly in season. You got a lot of kids around you that could play, and I was getting a bit older, and so you start to naturally do the math and work it out. So then you start to feel pressure to hold your spot. And so, again, like it does, you've got to be able to put that aside. I found that I played some of my best footy at VFL level. Now, I know the level goes down, but it was also the level that I could just enjoy
and
footy
relax
and
a little
free.
bit and say, like, it doesn't really matter.
Well, that's right.
I mean, it does matter, of course, but I'm not being detriment to the VFL, but not for your mindset going, well, I haven't got the Herald Sun all over me on the front page if I miss a clanger, right?
That's right, 100%. And so because the level was down, the scrutiny wasn't as high, you definitely could take it easy on yourself. I didn't work the games up as much as I did at AFL level.
And we've seen a monumental trade in the NBA recently with Luka Doncic and players getting bounced around all different directions, Paddy Mills, and play for different teams. And as a player of a product, you can get moved around. You moved towards the end of your career. Do you want to talk about that and that transition?
Yeah, so that was a different one for me because I got delisted by Melbourne, and so I was desperate for another opportunity, so I was willing to go anywhere in Melbourne. So we had kids that were at school, our life was there in Melbourne, so I wanted to stay in a Melbourne club. But it's different to a guy that all of a sudden gets the phone call while he's in Bali on holiday saying, hey, mate, we're about to trade you. That would be a different kettle of fish, I could imagine.
Yep.
But mine was
still like leaving that story behind and the chapter, and you have to build
start
up to
again.
a new chapter. To new club, new president, new CEO, new way of doing things, new coach.
Yeah, 100%.
New players, yeah.
I actually found it really refreshing.
Okay.
Because it was my last year at Melbourne was a tough year. Like I only played 5-6 games in that year. The club had clearly moved past me and they were on to the next generation. They started to have some success, which I felt I was on the outer that whole year, playing really good footy in the VFL, ended up winning the VFL best and fairest and leading goalkeeper, blah, blah, blah. So I was going well enough to play, but I wasn't getting played. So I sort of knew that my papers had been stamped. So it became a tough year psychologically for me in 2010. So then when I got the opportunity, got delisted at the end, another opportunity at a big club, it was like a fresh start. And so I was meeting everyone with fresh eyes and it actually reinvigorated me, to be honest.
And was there a thought then that was it around that time?
Oh, yeah, like I'd prepared in 2010 to start looking at doing something else because, I was pretty fortunate that I got another opportunity through the pre-season draft. I could have very well been finished.
And at that time in 2010, did you have a plan B around in your head? Like what were you doing? Were you studying? Were you thinking, were you working somewhere or thinking, if I just don't get picked up here, what am I going to do? Yeah,
so a couple of times I've flirted with, at the time we had a family friend who had started a business in Melbourne, so it was in residential property investing. And so I was sort of doing a day a week while I was at Melbourne there, just putting my toe in the door, doing a bit of client relations stuff, just getting exposed to different elements of business. So it was whether I was going to do that full time. I also had another mate who was in the property development game. So it
sounds like a theme here.
Do I go and do a...
would have been good to invest in property in Melbourne in retrospect 15 years ago.
Yeah. So... I had interest in property. I'd invested in property throughout my playing career. So that it was always something that I wanted to explore. But the reality of sitting behind a desk and doing that, following a company model, it wasn't so much in the property. It was like you then had to go out and preach the company model to get new clients. And so it was a sales role, essentially. But it was a great reality check. Like being able to do that while I was playing, when I got the opportunity to go to Richmond, it was almost like I'd seen that side of life. In a small sample size, understandably, but it also gave me the gratitude and appreciation for getting a second chance. And so those last 2 years at Richmond, I absolutely loved my time there. It was amazing.
Yeah, right, awesome. And then towards, obviously now that you made the call, you're like, time's up, and the love of the game was still strong that you wanted to potentially stay in it.
Yeah, well, the thing with going to Richmond was there was a potential to develop my coaching at whatever level. So
part of the deal sort of thing? Or
well, it was initial discussions. Yeah. It was like they've got a couple of key position guys that are developing. We need you to come and mentor and, show them how to train and how to push yourself and all that sort of stuff. So that was a part of the package when I came over. I was just, through my own competitive nature, I just was like, well, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to go and play. And so I did that from the day one.
Yeah, I can develop as all you want, but
that was my attitude.
Select me.
Yeah, which I think, you've got to have. I think that would be as important for a young player to see that in an older guy than it is just to go there purely as a coach.
Yeah, shake hands. You're doing a good job, but I'm going to beat you.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
That was my attitude.
Yeah. And you got your 100 games?
End up playing another 30 odd or 35 or so at Richmond, but I'd played 138 at Melbourne, so got up over 150. So I played my 150th at Richmond.
150 at Richmond.
Yeah.
And from the dream as a kid,
Yeah.
to then play the 150 running through, getting the milestone.
Yeah.
How did that feel?
It was funny. I didn't, it was big on the day, but it's not something I really paid attention to till post. I realised, because at the time, when you're in that competitive environment, I just wanted to, and I was mates with guys that had played 200 and 250, and in your head, you're like, if you haven't done that, you're not as good as them, or you're not worthy, and all that sort of stuff. You just get caught up in that competitive mindset. That's just how you.
Well, you're an athlete. You're a competitive athlete, right? It's in your blood.
Yeah, that's right.
Not in your blood, but in your actual day-to-day job.
And so you're looking around at guys, and you're like, "Well, I'm playing footy with you. You're a champion. You played 250, and then I'm playing my 150." So to me, it was insignificant at the time. But now when I look back on it, it's like, yeah, if I'd have told myself when I was 16 years old that I was going to go on and play 150 games, you take that in a heartbeat. It's a big achievement, but it's not something
lock it in, Eddie.
Until I had hindsight that I could appreciate.
Yeah, and then the coaching element, obviously a little bit potentially at Richmond, while you're a player, sort of mentor style. And is there something there that you thought, actually, I could make a difference here?
Yeah, so when I finished, when I was no longer going to play on any AFL footy, I remember Wayne Campbell, who is now currently our general manager of footy at the Gold Coast Suns. So he was establishing the Tigers VFL team. So they were going to break away from Coburg and create their own standalone VFL team. And so he wanted me to then play, but then coach as well. So there was going to be a playing coaching.
Like a player-coach thing, yeah.
Which is sort of common now, but back then it wasn't.
Yep.
And so it was a way that they could get a player, one for their VFL side, but then also you could split the wage and get a coach plus player. So it was an economical way to get both.
Yep. And how'd you go there?
So I never did that. So I chose not to. So I wanted to have 2 years when I finished playing because I always wanted to get back into it. Over those last 2 years at Richmond, it did actually light the fire. I did coaching courses, and so I was being exposed to the coaching element. But I decided I wanted a break. Once I'd finished, I was like, I want to have 2 years away and actually just do something else, find some other things to do, add some colour to your life, face new challenges, all the rest of it. But I only lasted for one.
Yeah, right. So, and the reason for that, just getting a little bit footy obsessed, the brain?
Yeah, it was the pressure that we were talking about. So I'd built it up so much that
365 in your head.
Pretty much, yeah. It was hard to hit the off switch. It's why I'm passionate about it now, guys being able to have the balance, being able to be flat out 100% when you're there, but then also being able to walk out the door, having had the discussions that you need to have to feel content enough to walk away and turn the off switch on and just recharge.
Yeah, because it's been such a part of your life, I'd imagine. So what are you doing that year?
So I worked with a company that were based in Adelaide. Again, it was in property, but it was self-managed super funds, and so it was a sales role similar to that. I'd go and walk you through the company's model to invest your super in property.
Yeah, right.
And so what they were doing was trying to
I don't have any property in my super.
You don't?
No, should I?
Well, maybe you should.
I've got some shares.
You're talking to the wrong person. I'm a coach.
Just trying to get your pitch now.
No, so when I did that, I'd gone from being in a locker room with 44 other guys. They were an Adelaide company trying to branch out into Melbourne and leverage contacts.
And networks that you built through your career. Yeah.
Pretty much, but I was in an office by myself. And so they would come over for 2 days of the week, the guys from Adelaide that were teaching me. But I was basically I've gone from 44 of your best mates around you all the time to then being isolated. It's like, this is not for me.
So you're in a satellite office, not the main office, by yourself.
Yeah.
No one recognises you. No one taps you on the shoulder. You can't talk. There's no team there.
Well, it was more the banter. I just missed the locker room banter.
So it's just like a library.
Yeah. So it was and I was still playing footy. I went to Heidelberg and played a year at Heidelberg in the Northern Footy League.
Yep.
And so I still had that element. I look forward to training on a Tuesday, Thursday in games. So that side of it was still going well. But in terms of work, I was like, there's got to be something else out there that I can, one, utilise my strengths, but also just be around people, because I'm a people person. I enjoy conversation. I enjoy the banter and taking the mickey out of someone, having a laugh, all that sort of stuff. That's hard to replace when you've been in a footy club your whole life.
Yeah, and you're sitting in an office just quiet, maybe putting the radio on or something. Yeah,
it's like you're on the show alone.
But then getting on to coaching, the love again for footy lasted a year outside of it. But then right, let's get back into it, and your opportunities that you got. Then you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so I definitely started to feel the pull, and then I remember the pivotal moment was Paul Roos had got the job at Melbourne, and so he was going to go back, and he needed a whole new coaching panel to go back with him. And so I knew Paul from my playing days. There was a possibility of being traded to Sydney at some point in my career, and so I'd met Paul and I knew Paul, but then also Josh Marnie, who was the forward line coach at Melbourne under Dean Bailey. He was then moving into operations and to general manager. So I had those two contacts, plus I reached out to Richmond as well. So, yeah, the pull to get back in came a year earlier than I had hoped or wanted or planned. But, once I reached out to both Melbourne and Richmond and the job came available to get into development, it's just I haven't looked back, really.
Yeah, and being on the other side, not playing, and the way that the game has potentially changed, has it been hard to adapt as a coach now versus a player, that maybe a decision that you would have done as a player is probably a little different potentially with the game?
Yeah, there's frustrations involved with coaching because you're not actually doing. And
from a competitive person, that'd be a little bit tricky, right?
Yeah, it is because you
want to get out there.
I am a person who, if I do see something that's struggling or not working, I want to just take over and do it myself. That's just an innate part of my personality.
Yeah.
But what I always do is I always challenge. If I see that something's not getting through, I challenge myself that my message isn't getting through. So what have I done to contribute to this not working the way that it should work? And that's the question I'm constantly asking myself and have done since day one. How can I do this better? I would always do that as a player, but now as a coach, it's different. It's like your messaging and how can you build a relationship with that player so he trusts you more, so then when you ask him to do that at halftime or three-quarter time, he actually responds for you. So that's just a question that's always reverberating in my brain.
Yeah, and I suppose a player that sees you, they're like, oh, I don't really know him, but after a while you develop that trust, and so then your role is to get that trust with that player to say, this is what I think, and they go, oh, actually that makes a bit of sense.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe early on they might just say, oh, thanks for the advice.
Pretty much, and I would try to mimic. I would always try to mimic coaches that I'd had when I was young.
Yep.
Like when I first got into coaching, I'd try to coach like my dad, or I'd coach like Neil Danaher, and so I learnt early on that ranting and raving and trying to be the emotional coach all the time, if you haven't done the work to build the relationship, then it's just pointless.
Sort of in one ear, out the next.
It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous way to go about it. And in those days, because Melbourne is affiliated with Casey, I was a development coach, and so I was actually a line coach for the VFL side. So I'm going out to Casey 2 nights a week plus game day, coaching our Melbourne guys who are playing for Casey, but then also coaching Casey players and yelling and screaming and doing all that without having built the relationship with those guys because I'm seeing them twice a week. It was a good lesson to learn that that's not for everyone. You can't coach how you've been coached. You've got to find out who you are as a coach.
And who are you as a coach?
I'm more of this. I'm a people person. Yep. Like I try to invest in a player to make them feel like I care about them as a person. Then I feel like the X's and O's and the tactics and all that sort of stuff, you're better placed to ask a player to do something if you've built the relationship. And so if you asked any of the players now, I would hope that they would say that, yeah, he cares about me as a person. That's who I am. And then
the opportunity to come back to your home state.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that and now, where you're at now?
Well, it was having kids. So Indy, my daughter's now nearly 5, and so we were in Sydney on the Central Coast and quite isolated from family. My wife's Western Australian, so she was Perth until sort of later in her adolescence and early adulthood. She moved to Melbourne, and then we ended up meeting in Sydney. But being pretty isolated in Sydney, I'd stepped away from the Giants because we'd just had the baby, gone into hubs in COVID. She was only 6 weeks old, and we were faced with been away for
just
18,
didn't
20
know.
weeks.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I stopped. I pulled the pin that year in 2020. I had to step away and look after her. So I'd had that little break, chose not to do it again in 2021. So that was the year that I stepped away, became director of coaching, again under Wayne Campbell. He was at Sydney Uni in the Sydney Football League in the NEFL at the time. And
So from Richmond to Sydney and now the Gold Coast.
now back to Gold Coast. It's funny how footy works like that. It's a people industry. So, so through that period, we were like, Wayne called me and he said, "Oh, look, this job's about to come up," because we're at Sydney Uni together. And then he said, "Oh, look, I'm about to take on this opportunity. Would you come with me?" And so it planted the seed because we'd already been talking about possibly moving up, even if the coaching stuff wasn't an option, because we're just going to try and get Indy back around her cousins and family and grandparents and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, we'd been speaking about it for a little while, and then when the opportunity came about, Daisy, my wife, she had a Brisbane office, so she could transfer easily and away we went.
And so far so good, having fun?
Loving it, yeah. So this is my 4th year. So the last 2 have obviously been under Damien, and we're starting
Again, I don't know, Richmond?
Yeah, it was, yeah. 2011, 2012, under him as a player.
Yep.
And so that was his 2nd and 3rd year as Richmond coach. And so he's obviously gone on 14 years he was at Richmond.
Yep.
It's interesting seeing who he is now compared to who he was back then. So young coach, came in, had some really strong views on how he wanted the game played, but it was a lot of detail. Like I remember the game plan early days, it was just thick, like playbook that would have been 80 pages long. Every way was scripted. You had to turn this way, ball movement to here, like everything. The detail that he was trying to get across was too much for the group. It stifled the creativity of the group. So seeing where he's at now, he's got a massive eye for detail because he's an accountant by trade.
Oh, right, okay.
His background.
Numbers, hey?
Numbers, yeah,
Balance
stats.
sheets, P&Ls.
But what he's done now is he's actually been able to grow and adapt, and so he instills the belief in the players to just play and to feel that freedom to just play within the parameters of how he sees the game should be played.
Yep.
It's been interesting to see 15-year veteran coach compared to 2nd, 3rd year rookie coach.
Yeah, right. And the evolution. That's fantastic. And the evolution of your coaching style as well, you think, now?
Yeah, now, well, definitely. Like I've improved the last 2 years as a coach exponentially because of Dimmer, the way that he sees the game and the way that everything has to be backed by fact. It's less by feel. The art of coaching is always going to be by feel, but if you've got any suggestions to make or if you've got any ways that you think you want to change the game style, you better come with some facts as to how it's going to work.
Like a process-driven, like data backup.
It's
like
data
a lot
backup.
of the businesses that I used to follow back in my stockbroking days were very like, come with me if you can show the data that it's going to improve margin by 0.5%, which will improve the top line by whatever, which will be domino effect, etc.
Yeah.
And how like it's just not an idea. It's like, well, actually we've tested it and it works, etc.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And so often an idea is spawned through gut feel and something you see in the game and I think we can do this a bit better. Then you start to dig in a bit deeper. What are the better sides doing? What are the numbers to back it up? Where do we sit? Like all of that needs to come with your presentation or your idea or it'll go in one ear and out the other. Yeah.
The scoreboard moment is a new segment within the podcast, which I started about 3 podcasts ago, impromptu. But it's a moment in your life which you think you remember very vividly that has defined who you are, whether it be sporting field, whether it be a person off the sporting field, Brad the sportsman versus Brad the dad or whatever it might be. But I'm curious to know what your scoreboard moment is.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a lesson that I've learned this year with my son. So he's now 18, has relocated to Los Angeles 3 years ago and is punting. He's about to go to UCLA punting. And so he's just taken up footy over the last 2 years over there. But
footy being NFL.
NFL, kicking, yeah. So high school punter, Oaks Christian College, about to go into college. And so it's all happening for him at the moment. And so the thing that I've learnt with him was when he was with me and here, I was his coach and I would always be hard on him the way my dad was hard on me. And it wasn't for him. Like that sort of coaching just wasn't for him. And so me being able to see him prosper over there with me being a phone call away, like I'm his mentor, but it has to be on his terms. And I try to think about who he is as a person rather than who I want him to be or, who I think he should be. accepting and embracing who he is as a person has seen him flourish. Like the space that exists between us now in our relationship has allowed him to grow into who he's become. And so it's that element of being aware that not everyone wants to be coached a certain way. You've got to have perspective. What's going to get the best out of him right now is to give him the space for him to develop that own sense of identity. And by doing that, giving him that space, he's been able to flourish.
And you know what that reminds me of, Brad? Your story.
Yeah.
Giving you space when you're injured.
Yeah.
Your mum.
Yeah. So it was a big moment. Yeah. I nearly said that one actually because when I was
very similar.
16,
right?
yeah.
You're like, I'll throw it in. I've too many injuries. And your dad was more like, come on.
Yeah.
And your mum was like, just give him a bit. And you're doing the same with your son now. Eh?
Yeah, that's right. So it was that space that she gave me that actually lit the fire for me to go on and get drafted without a doubt. Because
let's hope that's the case for college and then the NFL, right?
Let's hope so. Yeah. So if he gets to suit up for UCLA, that'll be a pretty special moment. Yeah.
You'll go over there, you reckon?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. I had Jesse Williams on the podcast he won a championship at Alabama.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, and he ended up getting drafted for the Seattle Seahawks. It didn't get a game, but the team went and won a Super Bowl. But he was just telling me the budgets of the college football. He's like, the budget is yes. I'm like, what's the budget is yes? He goes, yeah, Alabama's 105,000 people every week.
That's crazy, isn't it?
It's an unbelievable system. And they're seeking out Australian athletes because there's a pool of depth of talent over here. So hopefully, fingers crossed. Just touching on the parent relationship, I'm a parent of 3 kids that play sport, and kids out there now see the glory and lights of being an AFL player or being a cricketer or being a netballer or whatever it might be. What's some advice to now, being at the age you're at, to kids out there that have that spark and have that desire?
Because I get asked that question a bit, and I always think that the best thing, particularly with kids your age that are 12 years old, you can't specialise in a sport too early, and they've got to be having fun the whole time. And so I would be exposing kids that are under 16 to as many sports as they can, even if they have a break from footy and go and play basketball, or just try as many things as they can to make them a more well-rounded athlete. They can specialise later. And I think it has to be.
Specialisation's happening a bit, for my eyes, happening a bit too much.
Oh,
now.
Way too much.
And it's just new to me because I've got a 12-year-old, but it's like the kid plays cricket and that's it.
Yeah.
And then they play cricket in the winter and they play cricket in the summer and the kid plays, and they're good cricketers. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, wow, didn't happen when I was growing up.
Yeah.
But I suppose the money and the fame and fortune potentially at that age, kids start specialising.
I think, some people might be able to make a case for it. And I would say you would get better at that sport. But I think at some point, if the kid's feeling pressure to get better all the time from, let's say, they're 10, 11, 12, at some point they're going to want to check out. Like they're going to have enough. You're going to burn a kid out.
Yeah.
So
I agree. Like I'm with you. I find it a bit of an eye-opening.
And it's getting worse because there's now academies and there's, these development programs and pathways and stuff, which are great. Don't get me wrong. Like our club has a great academy system that starts at around this age, under 12s. But I think at the same time that you're doing that, you need to be going to play basketball. You need to be going to...
and meeting new people as well, right?
Exactly. New environments,
could be your best friends forever. You don't know.
And being average at something. Like, okay, you're in a specialist program to be the best cricketer that you can be. Why don't you go and try tennis where you're not great and feel what it feels like to be average and learning something new again? I think that's really important for kids.
That's a great way to finish, Brad. Thank you so much for being on the Scoreboard podcast today and sharing your story. And congratulations on your career as an AFL player. But now the next chapter as a coach and also as a parent and also living your life post AFL, broadly speaking, as a player, but also as a coach. And I wish you well.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.